Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Goin Digital Show, the podcast for K-12 school leaders. I'm your host, Greg Goins, a school district superintendent in the state of Illinois, and this is episode number 16, and tonight we're talking all about digital citizenship. I want to welcome our live viewers on the TeachCal network at teachcal.com. If you have a question for our guest tonight, you can always participate by using the EduLive hashtag. If you can't make it to the live show, you can always find the Goin Digital Show on demand on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher Radio. So let's kick things off tonight as we welcome our two special guests, two of the leading experts in the area of digital citizenship. We have with us Mike Ribble and Susan Bearden. So welcome to you both tonight.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Mike is the technology director at the Manhattan-Ogden School District in the state of Kansas. He's an international speaker and the author of two books on digital citizenship. The first is Digital Citizenship in Schools, and also the author of Raising a Digital Child. Susan is the Director of Information Technology at Holy Trinity Academy in the state of Florida. She's the winner of a prestigious BAMI Award for School Technologist of the Year. She's also very active on Twitter, and you can find her with the Digital Citizenship Chat and the EdTech Chat as well. She's also the author of a new book in the Corwin Educator series titled Digital Citizenship, a Community-Based Approach. So we're looking forward to a great conversation tonight. If you're a school district superintendent, a principal, a teacher, anyone working in public education that has an interest in digital citizenship and how to raise digital children and support those folks as we're using more and more digital tools in the classroom, this is the show for you. So if we could, let's just go around and let's begin with Susan. Tell us a little bit about your background in education and maybe some of the things you've been working on this school year.
Actually, I'm a technology director, but I have kind of an unusual background for a technology director because I'm a former music teacher, actually. I taught strings and orchestra for several years in our public schools here in Brevard County, Florida, before making the transition to digital citizenship. And this is, digital citizenship is really it's really like a passion project of mine. That was one of the reasons why I wrote the book that just came out, was because I just felt like this is something that's so important, and Mike has done such awesome work with his books and in being a leader in the digital citizenship field. And so I'm inspired to try to help others on their digital citizenship journey as well.
Great. Mike?
Yeah, my day job is working as a tech director, and so I get to live this day in, day out. But like Susan said, this is one of those passion things for me as well. I was very fortunate to meet a professor by the name of Dr. Gerald Bailey when I was doing my doctoral work at Kansas State, and he began talking about in the early 2000s about the idea about being a digital citizen and what that meant, and it struck me so hard as far as where all of this could go, and the interesting ideas of how we could talk about socialization in the idea of being online. And it was just so interesting to hear him talk about that. As soon as I heard it, I told Dr. Bailey, I said, I wanted to start writing right away on my dissertation and focus on digital citizenship. So it was, it's been a long journey for me. This is about year 14 now, talking about digital citizenship in different ways. And I am so fortunate that ISTE has been such a big supporter with me, with the books, and just several different aspects that they've kept going. So I'm just excited to talk about it and thankful to be on here and talk about it.
Well, we're glad to have you both. I know you both spend a lot of time out as advocates for this particular topic. And as a school district superintendent myself, I think we talk a lot about digital citizenship, but a lot of times we're not exactly sure what that means and what we need to do about it. So can you address that, Susan?
Sure. A lot of people will narrowly define digital citizenship as cyberbullying or internet safety. And the reality is that the whole concept of digital citizenship encompasses a whole range of digital literacies, ranging from understanding copyright and creative use to internet safety, of course, to understanding how to handle cyberbullying, to understanding how to do quality web searches and verify the authenticity of research sources. So I think that's the first thing. I think that's a surprise for folks, is that the whole world of digital citizenship is actually much more broad-based than a lot of people initially think.
And Mike, let's talk a little bit about the backstory. I think you spent at least 3 years, maybe longer, on your dissertation on this particular topic. So what is the backstory on this idea that we need to be teaching digital citizenship?
Well, that was the great thing about it, is having that time to really think about it and have that opportunity to see the scope of it. And that was what Dr. Bailey wanted me to do, was where are the edges of what a digital citizen is. And so, you know, and those that have done dissertations, those that are superintendents, and those that have done thesis, you know it's a long journey to get there. And so I just started to take all these different ideas and just started to build on them and see, what does it mean to be a member of an organization, a member of a place that encompasses everybody basically in the globe. And that was what was so, when you stand back, was so awesome for me to see how big this was. And when you even look at the beginnings, when you talk about some of the early gaming and just the communities and how they learned how to become sort of their own self-governance, in this. So that was when I began to look at these elemental ideas of what does it mean to be a citizen. And so we started to talk about, the rights and responsibilities and the literacy and the etiquette and the commerce and all of these aspects that kept kind of swirling around. And so, we have a lot of folks that, want to take the digital part of it off. And I'm not in disagreement with that, because it is a citizenship. It's how we live. It's how we interact with people around us. But at this moment in time, to just say citizenship, I think, has a different connotation. I think when we hear citizenship, we just think, oh, that's, living in the United States or living in Europe or living, in another country. But this new citizenship, this digital citizenship, is so different. It's so intriguing to look at, and even with all the terrible things, and there are some awful things that go on. There are some people that have committed suicide, and there's been cyberbullying, and there's been all these things. But the wonderful things that we have access to for our students, and the great things that they hopefully will be able to do. I mean, when we start talking about maker spaces and all of those pieces of what are they going to do as they become adults? And isn't that really the goal of educators, is that we want to prepare them to be productive members of a society? And I think digital is part of that.
Susan, you agree?
Absolutely. I also agree with Mike's assessment that, I do understand the emphasis to just take digital citizenship or just make it citizenship. But as he pointed out, there are some different digital literacies and sort of context-specific challenges to being a digital citizen that maybe regular citizenship does not necessarily encompass. And also, another really good point that Mike brought up is the importance of talking about the benefits of digital media. So often, even when people think about digital citizenship, they're focused on the dangers. They're focused on the cyberbullying, the internet predators. They're focusing on negative digital footprints, the things people say on social media. but they're not focusing on the incredible power of these digital tools to connect and collaborate with others. I've been working on a project this semester with called Mad About Mattering with Vicki Davis and Angela. It's a project with her and Angela Meyer and a app development company called Coursera, and we've had students at 5 different schools working in teams to develop blogs, or to develop mobile apps. And it's not just the mobile app development. They've been working together collaboratively on wikis. They've been using Trello for project management. And I hadn't realized when I started the project how many opportunities I would have to try and model good digital citizenship in these online spaces, and how to, maybe take advantage of some teachable moments. And so I think that's an important thing to remember, is that there are so many positives to connecting with other students via these social media platforms and in online spaces. And we need to teach students to leverage these tools appropriately because they're incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And as you both know, unfortunately, every school district's kind of on their own different path as to where they're at technology-wise. But unfortunately, there are too many school districts throughout the country that just want to turn their head, and they want to shut it down. No cell phones, no social media. You can't even do a Google search for some things when you're in your school. So it's very unfortunate that kids have a greater digital experience outside of the school day than they do when they're actually in school from a traditional 8 to 3 type of setting. So you talked about teachable moments. Isn't it our responsibility as educators to kind of walk these young people through what it means to be responsible digital users?
Absolutely. You brought up a really great point. A lot of times, the minute the school bell rings, these kids have unfiltered internet access on their cell phones. So even if you're blocking it and locking it down during the school day, these kids are still going to have access. And even if they don't have a phone with internet access, they have a friend who does. And so I would much rather students learn how to use social media under the guidance of caring, mature adults who can help them when they make mistakes and turn those into teachable moments, than just to kind of, let them loose on the highway as soon as the bell rings. It's a great disconnect. It's kind of like, I really like the analogy of a driver's license. You don't let a kid just go out and they turn 16. Okay, here are the keys. Go out and drive. You make them take driving courses. They have to do X amount of time practicing with an adult driver. They may have to get a learner's permit. There's the scaffolding that's in place to make sure that kids develop the skills they need to be safe drivers. And I view using these social media tools and other using the internet in general as being the same category.
And Mike, my guess is when you go out and speak about this topic, you probably deal a lot with the fear factor, a lot of the what if. How do you address that?
Well, I put it right out there. I mean, we talk about it, and in some of my latest presentations, I talk about fear, and I put that right out front. But, it's one thing to be afraid for fear's sake, but there's a whole nother piece of being afraid to protect and to understand what the dangers are. So I think that there isn't a bad thing about being somewhat fearful, because that puts us on a little bit heightened awareness. It lets us know that there are things that can harm us and there are things that can cause issues, but those are the things that we need to help our students, and I think we need to start so young. And a lot of the things that Susan said, about being those role models, and the only way we can do that is understand the entire scope of it, understand all the different aspects as opposed to just the parts and pieces that are in the media. We could talk about trolls and we could talk about all of those things, but a group that we really have to touch on are those parents. We've got to draw those parents in, because they are always the primary educator. So they're there in the home when they have a lot of unfettered access. Sometimes it's on our devices that are from the schools. So they need to be aware. It's so interesting to hear parents talk about this, and I hear parents say, well, we give them all these devices and they're still not getting their homework done. And it's like, okay, but where are they doing it? Well, they take them into their bedroom, and they're in there for 3 hours, and then they come out and say that they don't have their homework done. Well, you need to parent. Parenting is it's an action. It's going out and being involved. And we used to talk about in the old days about putting the computer in a public space. Even if it's mobile tech, I think with kids, we need to put it out into public spaces. If they need privacy, then I think we need to build up towards that. And that's something that parents say, well, my kids say that they, if I don't let them go into their bedroom, I don't trust them. Well, trust is something that is built, and it's built both ways. We need to be honest with our kids, and they need to be honest with us. And it's trite to say, well, just talk to your kids. Well, it is, but we have to get more than just talking. It's getting involved. It's being, in their lives and being involved. And we do that as teachers. We're there. We're involved with them. And now on a digital level, it brings a whole nother scope to where we've been. Kids used to pass notes, in the classroom and things like that, but not everybody saw it. When they post, in Snapchat or they're posting in Instagram or wherever it might be, there's a lot of people that could see that. There's just such a bigger opportunity, and they need to know that there is a bigger world that's out there, that it isn't like this old idea of a diary that I'm going to talk to this piece of paper and share my innermost thoughts. Well, when I post it out, that all my friends can see, that becomes a whole different thing. So that's not a bad thing, but they need to understand that. And the brain research says, kids at those ages just aren't, they don't have that capability to understand that long-term, what's the ramifications. We need to help them. And that idea, I love that idea, Susan, about the driver's license, and I have to give a shout out to the folks in Kentucky, Marty Park and those guys. The iDrive Digital, it's a great product. It's free. I mean,
Yep.
it's out there. Those guys have worked on this thing. That's part of Marty's dissertation work. I mean, Marty's been working just his fingers to the bone on these things, and it's just a great product that they are sharing. And I was just up in Canada, and because of their privacy laws, they couldn't go and get to it in Kentucky. So the folks in Kentucky shared their core information with them so they could put it on their own server up in Canada so that they could do it. So that digital driver's license metaphor is just so striking for me. I love that.
I'll also give a +1 to the digital driver's license. Mike, we use it at my school as well. And in fact, we had all of our upper school kids this year had to get their digital driver's license at the start of the school year. And you always kind of wonder, well, does it stick? And then we had on our open house day, we had a student who was giving a tour and to some prospective families, and a parent actually asked, and I was standing nearby, if we taught anything about digital citizenship, which was a complete surprise to me. And before I even had a chance to pipe up, the students said, oh yes, we did our digital driver's license, and we took an online course, and we got our license at the start of the school year, and I was, yay, so proud.
Very good.
And so we think about this concept of a digital driver's license, and I'm sure there are a lot of folks out there listening that are thinking, you know what, you get your driver's license at age 16. A lot of these social media apps, they're restricted until maybe you're age 12 or 13 to get on and participate. But what is the ideal age to start having these conversations? I would assume it's much younger than that.
Well, Greg, I would say that at a basic level, they've got to start at age 4 or 5. I mean, I hate to say it, but the statistics that are coming out, Common Sense Media just did some research, and they're saying,
I think we lost Mike for a second. There he is.
yeah,
You're back.
over 50% of children by the age of I think it was 3 years, 4 years, somewhere in there, that they have had some contact with digital technology already. So it's starting early, and that's why the parents are so integral into this whole discussion, and that's why I wanted to do that book on raising a digital child, was because the parents are such a big part of this equation. And it's not when they get into schools and they might get a device or tablet, but it's when they're handing it to them. And just take a moment and look at, and if you're in the restaurant and you're in a shopping center, any place, look at the children in the strollers and see if they don't have an iPhone or a smartphone or a tablet or something that they are working on. So yes, we talk about this age 13, and it is for their protection, really. I mean, the companies put it there for a reason. But my wife's a third grade teacher, and she's had third graders that have asked her in the past, when it was popular, to friend her on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
But I think kids are even still getting on Facebook younger, because I coin it as sort of the gateway social media, because parents seem to think they understand Facebook, so it's safer to go onto Facebook, where it's not evil like Snapchat or Instagram or other things that are out there. So but it tends to be, oh yeah, well, you can go ahead and get on Facebook because grandma's on Facebook, and so we can keep an eye on you.
Susan?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly that you need to start young, as young as 4 or 5. I know that the Common Sense Media has a wonderful digital citizenship and literacy curriculum that is available for free. It's K through 12. It's aligned with the Common Core standards, the ISTE standards, and I think it's the American Association of School Librarians. And they start with the little ones. And I absolutely concur with that. I remember I was shocked when my granddaughter, who was then 6, came over to visit, and she was navigating her way around YouTube, and she knew exactly what she was doing, and I was shocked. I mean, she's 6, and she's on YouTube, and she knows how to do searches on YouTube. And that's when it really brought home to me the importance of, especially because now kids are so video focused, and they'll know how to go to YouTube, for instance, to find Minecraft tutorials, which is a wonderful thing. But then, there's other content that they need, that's not so wonderful. So we need to be sure that we are educating kids before they start using these platforms.
So as we think about creating some type of digital citizenship curriculum in our schools, is it a particular curriculum that you're both advocating for, and how do we go about doing that? And Susan, you're shaking your head, so we'll go to you.
There's no one right way to teach digital citizenship. There are lots of amazing resources out there. We've mentioned 2, Common Sense Media and the Digital Driver's License. There's many others. And there's no one right way to do it. I think every school community is different. Some schools, I think it's best when digital citizenship is really incorporated as part of the everyday curriculum. But I also believe that any digital citizenship education is better than none at all. So whether it's a standalone course, or if a teacher is incorporating it into some of their lessons, or even if they're just doing group collaborative projects and they're taking advantage of those teachable moments. There's so many different ways that you can teach digital citizenship. For me, the important thing is that you start doing it.
I agree. I think you have to do something, and what I've found is a lot of this is grassroots. It typically doesn't come from a superintendent down. It's usually from the classrooms, and it kind of bubbles up, and those are the people I usually hear from. And usually, even when I get invited, it usually is from somebody who's in a classroom, or somebody that said, I heard about your stuff, or I read this about you, or read this article. So usually it's that move up, and what I did was I took my elements, because 9 is quite a bit for some people, and I broke it down into 3 major categories and what I called my reps. And in the 3rd edition, we focus a section on what I call respect, educate, and protect. And I do 3 rotations of reps that are building blocks that I see of getting those ideas out and starting to talk about them. So, in kindergarten 1-2, we start talking about things like etiquette and literacy and rights and responsibilities, and begin to have those conversations at their level so that we can start having those discussions, because you can talk about these topics in some very basic ways, and I think teachers are looking for this, this over the sky kind of mentality, but there's very basic things that we can do. A lot of those classrooms in those K through 5, 6 grades, they have classroom rules, and I think the digital is one of those things that I think we need to start incorporating. It doesn't have to be all of them, but maybe one of them that, talks about, when I'm online, I treat others as I would treat them in the classroom, or something along those lines. Or, how do you, sometimes we call it the care and feeding of our devices. How do we take care of our devices? I was struck by a gal by the name of Kristen Zemenke up in Chicago area, and she was a kindergarten teacher at the time, and now she does consulting and does a lot of other things. But Kristen was talking to a group of Apple educators about how she trained her kindergarten students about how to properly take out the iPads and be able to take them into the classroom and get them set up so that they could use them for the day. So that, to me, is digital citizenship. That is understanding of what the tool is and becoming literate about how do I interact with this piece of equipment. And we begin to build on those, and we don't have to spend all day long talking about it, but as Susan said, we can embed those things into the curriculum, but you can only do that if you understand the aspects of what the digital use is and how to show it as that leader in the classroom. And that, to me, is the biggest part, is how do you become the person that they look up to show you how to be a good digital citizen.
And Susan, kind of walk us through what does a day look like in the school that you're working in now? Is it a daily focus on digital citizenship? Is it weekly? Just kind of walk us through what it looks like in your school.
Our lower school in particular has a very strong character education program. So it is really an extension of our character education program. We do have some formalized training that we do with the kids. We use common sense media resources. Our media specialist does some wonderful work with the older grades. But then also, for instance, we use Google Apps for Education. And so I hear, like our English teacher, our 5th and 6th grade English teacher, will talk a lot about digital citizenship and when the kids are blogging, and if they are commenting on other students' blogs, and how to do that appropriately. And even if they're working on a collaborative assignment together, are they, being appropriate in their comments? Or even had a case where a student stole the password or figured out the password of some other students. Well, that led to a great teachable moment, too, about, why you shouldn't be stealing other people's passwords and logging into their account, or why you need to log out of your account when you stop using your Chromebook. So those are the kinds of things that I think happen on a daily basis. And then, of course, in our older grades, it really depends on the teacher in terms of, we have a BYOD one-to-one laptop program in grades 7 through 8 this year that's expanding to 9th grade next year, and I think that has also provided some teachable moments in terms of what the kids are doing online. So, like I said, there's no one right or wrong way to teach digital citizenship. It's all what's going to work best for your environment.
And I love this idea of teachable moments because it seems like every day we have a new opportunity to talk not only about digital citizenship, but just trying to be a better person. And one of the things that I think should be in every school is the think the Think poster. I'm not sure where it originated. You can probably give me more feedback. But is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? So I hope someone copyrighted that, because that was just such an incredible poster, and it's actually hanging in the halls in our school. So what is the background on that? Do you know, Mike?
I believe, if I'm correct, it comes out of the Josephson Institute, out of Character Counts. I believe. I'd have to verify that, but I know that they had it even before all the digital pieces in their materials that they had, and as Susan mentioned about the character ed, and that for a lot of us that are working in this, and I do have to give a call out to Dr. Jason Oler, who also works in this field as well. He's been very closely tied to the character.org and those groups, and he's actually in October will be at their conference, the character.org conference, and begin to really push forward this idea of the digital world in this character discussion. And I've worked a little bit with the Josephson Institute with Character Counts, and done a little bit of work for them at different times, and so we see that as critical to this, because when we start to get into this, a lot of the discussion that we get into is about character, but also empathy, and being able to understand and see other people. And I know that there's been an ongoing study at the University of Michigan that has been tracking empathy since about the 1980s. They've been doing a study with freshmen at the University of Michigan, and they have continuously tracked over the years a decline in empathy in those freshman students. So that's a real concern for us, especially in a society, in a citizenship where we don't have as much face-to-face contact, and it's harder to become empathetic when we don't have that constant reminder that somebody else is out there. And when we're in a classroom, we're sitting next to each other, we at least have that proximity. But when we get online, it all gets dropped. It becomes the screen, and that's it. And we forget about the people that are on the other side of it. And you hear a lot about the trolls and the things that go on in Twitter and different sites, and how could they do that? But I think it's that loss, that when we don't have that contact, that we forget, and we have to keep reminding people, and we need to help students to understand, and especially when we get not just those in the classroom next to us, but when we get on a global scale as well. And that when we start talking about the ISTE standards and those kinds of pieces, that's one of the major driving points, is not just about how we interact with each other in a classroom, but how do we interact with each other on a global scale. And I think that's the power. And Susan, I think, alluded to that, was that strength of getting even beyond just our walls and having all these opportunities. I mean, what she was talking about, of all these students being able to work on these apps and setting them up, and being able to interact with all these people on a regular basis that you wouldn't have if we used to mail letters and send them, and it would be weeks before we'd get any feedback. And now it's instantaneous. It's happening all the time. And so we talk about the exciting things, and I think that's us in technology. That's what keeps us going, is all these great things. And we need to keep the kids excited, but also to know that there's boundaries. We need to understand that as well.
And as you both know, this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and a lot of exciting activities are taking place, probably at your schools, just like they are here in my school district. And we all know that teachers do amazing things. They're the real heroes in the classroom, making a difference in a child's life each and every day. But we also know that a lot of our teachers are a little bit overwhelmed with how quickly technology is emerging. And we also know that at times they get a little bit frustrated. What advice can you give those teachers out there that might be listening that will tell you, I just don't have time to add one more thing?
Well, I would start by saying don't eat the whole elephant all at once. I would pick one aspect of digital citizenship that you find most relevant to you and to your classroom, and take 15 minutes a day to learn about it. You don't, I mean, I'm self-taught about digital citizenship. You know, I didn't take a course on this stuff when I was in school. It didn't exist back then. And that's how I learned, was by listening and reading. And really, it doesn't take a huge time commitment to make you relatively educated in a small period of time. So I just pick one aspect of it. And, do 15 minutes of reading a day. Follow the DigCit hashtag on Twitter, which has wonderful resources. Join the ISTE Digital Citizenship Learning Network, or the wonderful community on edweb.net, and just spend 15 minutes a day exploring. It's a journey, and that's one thing to remember. It's always a journey, because technologies are always changing, and the basics principles, I think, are always going to remain the same. But it is a journey, and it doesn't matter where you are at in your journey, as long as you are moving forward in your journey. That's what's important.
I agree 100%. I mean, you've got to do something. We still talk about Prensky and his ideas going back into the early 2000s of the digital immigrant and the digital native, and I've written about that and talked about it in a couple of different places, that the immigrant status is pretty much running out for a lot of us, and we've got to start embracing, if we want to be citizens, if we want to be involved, you've got to do, and you've got to put in some of the time, and that's what it is. If you want to become a citizen of the United States, you got to learn about the United States. It's just it's that easy. You have to spend the time, and it isn't, like Susan said, you can only eat an elephant one bite at a time. That's all you can do, and that's the big thing. Is everybody wants to drink from the fire hose, and I've got to know everything today. Well, as Susan said, we didn't learn it all in one day. We don't learn about all the new things every day. We take a bit at a time. We think about it. We spend time on it. And yes, people are busy. There's lots of things, but there are a ton of different options. And there are now courses out there in a lot of different universities that are offering digital citizenship, digital literacy, different aspects. And I was just talking to Dr. Oler, Jason, a couple of days ago, and he's telling me that now they're starting to break out into the business schools and begin to talk about these ideas, not just in education. Oh my! Sorry about that.
It's all right.
But it's not just something's still out there. But it's not just an education topic. It's a much larger aspect as well. So there's many different pieces. Sorry, I don't know where that sound's coming from.
That's okay. And that, I think that's, you kind of hit on the terminology by Prensky of digital natives, and I've talked about that a lot myself, about the, we have a lot of older teachers that would be in that digital immigrant category teaching digital natives. So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your book, Mike, Raising a Digital Child. I've been talking a lot lately with some different administrators throughout the country, talking about this idea that all of our students very soon are going to be from that new Generation Z. So we're talking about the millennials that are now gone, and we have this whole new Generation Z that is in our schools, and we're thinking about different ways we can find ways to engage them and to make their school experience a little bit better. So just talk a little bit about the generational aspect of different groups of kids that we've been dealing with over the last few years?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that we're seeing micro-generational shifts, and where you can have two children that are in the same household, even my children who are 3 years apart, had a very different um, learning and understanding of technology just because of the time that they were, my son came in at a time when Facebook, of course, was very, very popular. By the time my daughter was interested in it, Facebook had become more passé. It wasn't of interest. She got more into the Twitter at first, and then she moved on from that. Of course, for a lot of kids, it's all about what Susan talked about. It's all about the pictures. It's about the videos. It's about having that capture those moments. And there's a lot of very high-minded people that think that this is all about narcissism, and I don't think it is. I think the kids are trying to capture time. They're trying to capture their experiences, and they find that pictures are the best way to do that, or video, or whatever it might be. So they're utilizing that as a way to remember. And for those that are older like myself, sometimes it seems, why would you need 700 photographs of an event? Well, they want to show the best part of that. They want to show what they got out of it, and they're trying to share that with each other. And that's why I think things like Instagram and even Snapchat and those are so popular. I mean, even I didn't realize until a couple of years ago that Snapchat is really popular at the university level. It seems to be like the top one that kids are using, and they're trying to capture something. I think I sometimes I get into my own head sometimes, and I start thinking about what would have people way back that drew on cave walls, what were they trying to do? And to me, it's that same idea. They were trying to capture an idea, to try to capture a time, a place. And I think that's what our kids are doing. And I think that's where we have to meet them, but also to show them that there are other pieces too, that yes, that's important, but there's still these skills that we need to focus on. And I don't know that we have to do them in the same way we've always done them, but we need to start transitioning of how do we help these kids. And there's some great aspects of flipped classrooms and getting students to come to our classrooms hungry to find the answers. And I think that's where we need to go, and I think that's where we're headed.
Susan, what are your thoughts on the generational piece?
It's interesting because I was just thinking as Mike was talking how, back to my own high school years, and honestly, if cell phones had been around and cameras had been as ubiquitous as they are now, I probably would have been taking lots of photos too. We didn't, just because back then you actually had to carry around these big heavy things and take pictures and actually get them developed. But I remember even just like on field trips or stuff that I took, the pictures were very important to me when I would get them back. So, Mike, that's just a very interesting observation, is that, I don't necessarily know that teenagerhood has changed so much inherently. It's just maybe the tools available to the kids are always changing, and that's why we see some of these changes. But I think that, these digital tools may provide some different angles or different challenges that Mike and I didn't have back when we were in high school. But I don't think that the basic experience of adolescence, I don't think those challenges are necessarily a whole lot different.
And I was just having this conversation with some of my colleagues not too long ago. We were talking about the fact that it's not really technology unless you can remember a time in which it did not exist. So I can remember the first time I got on the internet. I can remember the first time I saw an iPad. So in my mind, these are these great technological advancements. But for this new generation of kids, they don't talk about technology. These are just utilities that are part of their
Yes.
daily life.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I mean, you have to really shift the way you think about that. And, you know, it still drives me crazy that we line up and go to the computer lab. You know, like that's the only place we can go to use the computer when, you know, you have technology everywhere all the time. So that generational piece is fascinating for me as well. Susan, at what point did you decide that this is a topic you wanted to write a book about, and how did you get involved with the Corwin series?
You know, it's interesting. This had been something that I've been, you know, obviously passionate about for a long time, and I was actually introduced to Corwin through Katrina Stevens, who give me a shout out to Katrina. Was the one who I credit her for getting me involved, because I'll never forget, I was actually presenting at ISTE. I was doing a workshop with Jerry Blumengarten, and so I had Twitter up, and I got a direct message from Katrina saying, "Hey, are you interested in writing a book?" And I'll just never forget it because it pops up in the screen in the middle of our workshop. But so she introduced me to the folks at Corwin, and that was how the introduction came about. They were very interested in including a book about digital citizenship in their Connected Educator series, and so then I just wrote up a proposal, and then it was accepted. And kind of the interesting thing about the Connected Educator series is that the books are quite short. Like, you know, Mike is the godfather here of digital citizenship and has written 2 amazing and critical books. Mine is 55 pages. So mine is where if you just want to get like a basic introduction to the concepts of digital citizenship, my book is an awesome way to start. And then if you want to like get into the meat of digital citizenship and really learn about it, and you know how, you know, all the different aspects of it, then you definitely want to read Mike's books.
And so, Mike, how long did it take you to really create the book concepts and get both those books written? What was that process like?
Well, you know, you remember your dissertation time. I mean, that's it's a long road, and again, I have to give a lot of credit to Dr. Bailey, because he actually made me write what's called a R&D dissertation, which is a research and development dissertation. And it's to create a product, and that's what I created. Was actually the first edition of Digital Citizenship in Schools was my dissertation. And it's interesting that Susan talks about ISTE as her common denominator for her book. I remember I was at the Philadelphia ISTE conference many years ago, and that's where they asked me to write the first book on digital citizenship. So I had sent a proposal to them beforehand, and actually got to meet with the book editor. He's since left ISTE, but got to meet with him and talked about it, and they said, we're ready to go, you know, whenever you put it together. And it was so interesting because you know, it's one of those precipitous things that, you know, it was actually 1 week before I defended my dissertation that I signed my contract for my first book. So I I walked into my defense feeling pretty good about myself, and until I got out of it. But it was a good process. It was well worth it, and but don't ask me to get another degree like that. I think I'm about degreed out, which for my wife, after all these years, she's very happy to hear that I am not pursuing any other higher education at this time. But it's just a long process. The Raising a Digital Child was a second book, and it was actually an imprint of ISTE's. They started to do some other books through another imprint called Homepage, and that's where I did Raising a Digital Child, and I really wanted to do that one even before the one for the schools, but when you get a dissertation in EdMin, you pretty much have to write what they kind of tell you. So that was where I focused on it, and that's where I began.
And I know you're both out on the road presenting, whether it's a keynote or a workshop talking about digital citizenship. So kind of tell our listening audience, what are some of the questions or most common questions that you receive when you're out speaking on this topic, and maybe what are some of the surprises? Susan?
I think it depends on the audience. For me, I always really enjoy speaking to parents because, as Mike said, I think that they are such a critical component of digital citizenship education. And what I like about presenting to parents is that there's similarities and differences in their experiences. What I have found is that most parents, even the ones that are very well educated, have gaps in their education about digital citizenship. And so they're often very grateful to get any kind of information that will help fill in those gaps. And, a lot of times when I'm talking with teachers or administrators, one of the common concerns that comes up is time, because let's face it, teachers are busy. They have a curriculum to get through. They have a lot of challenges they face in terms of time. And so I think that's where it can be helpful for districts to set aside time for teachers to learn about digital citizenship and to, give them a little bit of time and space to figure out how they can incorporate those tools into their lessons.
Mike, what about your experience?
I would agree. It just varies. Between probably the one from parents. I was doing a presentation and we were doing a Q&A at the end, and this mother said, "Well, my daughter just won't unlock her phone for me, so I can't I can't see what's on it." And I said, "Well, who pays the phone bill?" And she said, "I do." And I said, "You own the phone, so you can turn it off anytime you want." And I don't think she was quite ready for that answer, but it was an interesting one. Probably the one in the classroom. I was with a bunch of second graders, and we were talking about the different aspects of digital citizenship, and I was finishing up, and I hadn't talked to the teacher beforehand, and all of a sudden she says to her students, "How many of you have or have access to an Instagram account?" And these are second graders out of the blue, and so I kind of looked at her, and the hands that went up, 3/4 of the hands in this classroom went up before I could even blink. And I guess, it was one of those, you kind of knew that it was out there, but it was when you see it, and they were excited that they were on Instagram. And it was so funny because I went back to my hotel room afterward and had to look it up. And if you read the terms of use, which I think one of 3 people that reads the terms of use on anything, but it's the very first thing in terms that says, "This site is not for anyone under the age of 13. It doesn't say if, might, could, would, should. It doesn't. And I know that's all lawyer speak, and I understand that, but it was just so interesting that they were just thrilled that they had that access.
And as things evolve so quickly, we talked about that a little bit earlier in the show with digital tools. We don't know what the next great app's going to be or the next great technological invention's going to be. But at the end of the day, it's just really coming down to personal responsibility and teaching kids how to make good decisions. Is that right, Susan?
Amen. Yes, that sums it up quite nicely. The apps will always change. There's always going to be a new app, a new technology down the pike, but it's the basic ethical principles of use and responsible use that aren't going to change.
Okay, so I know a lot of my colleagues are out there listening, and they're probably have the same question that I'm going to ask you right now. I hate to put you on the spot, so it's been a great show, and I'm all in. I've bought into this idea that this is something that needs to be a priority in the school district. Where do I begin? What do I do tomorrow when I go and talk to my principals and teachers? Kind of give me a path to get me started. Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. As Susan said, her book, is a great segue to get started. There's a ton of articles. There's, my book. There's Jason Oler. He has written a book on digital citizen, digital community. I will tell you that I have to give a shout out to Mary Alice Curran, who's doing a lot of work on digital citizenship summits, hopefully coming to a area near you very soon. They are building that very quickly. Both Susan and I both presented at the summit, the first annual big summit in Connecticut. They had one international one already in Bournemouth, England. I was not able to attend, but they've already had that. We've got 4 or 5 international ones queuing up. We've got 2 or 3 here in the United States that are already queuing up. So, you know, they're great ways to be able to start having those conversations, getting people involved, and we bring in a lot of educators that folks like Carrie Gallagher and of course Susan was there, and there's just a ton of people that are in the field that are out there presenting, saying here it is day by day. And that's when I sat into Carrie Gallagher's and she talked about her experiences and how she helps her teachers on a daily basis. And I think she kind of does the same kind of thing that you do, Susan, kind of similar, kind of working. But she just blew me away with how each different classroom and how she really tailored them to each different curriculum, and how they began to pull that together. And so it became, and we were kind of going down the same idea of kind of like an ed camp kind of idea of bringing people together that are like-minded and have these ideas, but also people that don't. We had parents there, we had all kinds of different groups. So it's a building process, and I could keep going on and on. ISTE's got an academy that you could go through. It's broken down. I actually helped to produce that academy. It does have an administrator strand in it. You could do all 6 of them. It has all the different ISTE standards in it, plus some additional pieces. But I really kind of expanded on it to talk about how it is in the community and beyond that, parents, the whole thing.
Great. Susan?
Well, definitely. As I mentioned, my book was written as an introduction for those who are new to the concepts of digital citizenship. I do have in my final chapter, and I do have a chapter on how to build a digital citizenship program if you are in a school-wide or district position, and that was very heavily based on the Common Sense Media program that they have for becoming a digital citizenship certified school. So I have great thanks. Shout out to Kelly Mendoza with Common Sense Education for her help with that and in turning me on to that resource, and also for editing a draft of my book. And another good thing to do is to go through any of the digital citizenship courses, like the digital driver's license for the University of Kentucky, or even just go to commonsensemedia.org and start looking at all the amazing resources they have, and look at the curriculum and look at one of the units of curriculum and try and figure it out from, like, pretend you're a student and that you're going through it, and that how would you be perceiving that lesson. And so those are, again, it's so much of it is just to remember it's a journey, and wherever you are at, it's okay as long as you're moving forward.
Well, this has been a wonderful show, very informative, very educational, and I can't thank you enough for being here to kind of give us an intro to digital citizenship, and hopefully school districts that are watching this are going to try to look at some of those resources you've identified so they can begin their own path to creating those programs that are very much needed in our schools today with our digital natives. So as we close, let's, if you could each give us a closing thought, and tell us where we can find the book, because we want to sell a few books tonight, and maybe where else we can find you, whether it's a Twitter chat or how can we connect with you. And we'll start with Mike, and we'll let Susan close.
You can find books on Amazon. You can find it on the ISTE store. Any of those. You could just do a search on raising a digital child or digital citizenship in schools. Usually you can find it. You can find it on my website at digitalcitizenship.net, and there are some coming soon things that are on the website, and hopefully that by summertime we've got some exciting things to share out with people. But I'm out on Twitter at DigCitizen, and like I said, on my website at digitalcitizenship.net or .org.
All right, great. Susan?
And you can also find my book on Amazon. It's Digital Citizenship, a community-based approach. And you can find that on Amazon or on the Goin website, and there is a Kindle version available as well. And you can reach out with me on a number of ways. On Twitter, I'm at @S_Bearden, B-E-A-R-D-E-N. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. And I also have a website which is about to be redeployed this week. So that is susanmbearden.com. So if you go take a look at it tonight, it doesn't look very impressive. Come back in a couple of days when the new site is launched. And I'm very excited about that. So, but do please connect with me. I love talking about digital citizenship and answering questions. And if there's anything I can do to help, just ask.
Well, again, thank you to you both for being here. Wonderful discussion. This has been episode number 16, Digital Citizenship. So be sure to connect with our guest and continue to look at resources to help find those digital citizenship educational tools for your school and for your classroom. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Going Digital Show, and we'll see you soon. Good night, everyone.